Welcome to One Breath Wisdom, the podcast for therapists, healers, and soul-led space holders, ready to lead from wholeness, not burnout. I am Lisa McNett, founder of One Breath Institute and co-creator of the One Breath Method. Each week, I will be sharing trauma-informed insight, somatic tools, and real stories from the healing path, sometimes solo, sometimes with our co-founder, Debbie Dickey, and sometimes with special guests walking this path in their own powerful way. Together, we will explore how healing, embodiment, and presence can transform the way we live, lead, and care for others without losing ourselves. Let's take a breath and begin. Welcome to One Breath Wisdom. We are back. Myself, Lisa McNett, and Debbie Dickey here to co-host this episode. Love it when we get the opportunity to sit down and talk and share, because we run One Breath Institute together, and there's so much that we share in common with regard to experiences that we've had with students that come into the school, with connection calls that we have, and within the greater breathwork community. And so that's what we're going to dive into today, is some of the things that happen in the breathwork world that we don't like, that we do not condone, and some of the ways that we are different. And yeah, I'll just say that to set the stage, and we'll dive on into the conversation. Hey, Debbie.
Hey, Lisa, I don't like this big release trend. And I see with the students in our communities, like everybody's seeing these videos, these very vulnerable and even, I'll say, sometimes sexual, sensual angles. There's like a sex appeal element to this, which is really interesting to me. You know, these videos are in groups. People are more clothing, less clothing, and the angles are these big, heavy breathing, and it's like, and then like the physical touch with people in those videos is something else that I just don't like it. I don't like it at all. I like nothing about this big release trend for many reasons. One, because it starts telling new people in this world that an emotional release or healing trauma looks this way. Which is not fully true. And then another part of it is, I think about confidentiality. And I think about people who are genuinely in those experiences having maybe some past trauma coming through the surface and are genuinely experiencing or reliving trauma in that moment. And they're being captured, they're being recorded, and now they're being witnessed by hundreds, thousands, millions of people in this one moment, this one tender moment. And so there's that other part of it that I just really don't like. And I assume and hope that they have, agreements to show these videos. But I don't like these. I don't like these big release trends. So I want to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. And then also another thing I really don't like are all these short courses about being trauma informed in a weekend workshop. Like, that literally blows my mind. To gain a certification status or a credential even after a weekend workshop or series of workshops. This is not adequate for me, and this is not ethical for me either.
It's not, and you just dove right on in. Okay.
Yeah, I was just brought the passion.
Go to the deep end. And there's one that their marketing was. Whenever I see the marketing come through, I click on it because I am a breath worker. So I am somebody who gets targeted as being interested in breath work, and as you are as well. And so different ads come across. And there was one that I had clicked open a few months ago that was like, not even a weekend workshop, but this online course that you can do in one day. and you can be trauma informed and helping people with just these major big releases. And they use that. They use that imagery. They use those videos that you're speaking to of showing this. And it really is oftentimes very sexualized. I mean, it's interesting because yes, in some settings it might be hot, right? We might be, it depending on culturally where we are, but why is this what's being recorded? You know, if somebody has less clothes on, like why is that what is being recorded and why is that what's being used? And you do. I think I definitely have a very clear image, and I'm imagining anybody who is interested in breath work has probably seen some of these images. It's oftentimes, it's always, every now and then it's a man, but it's usually a woman that is at the center feature of these ads. And they might be sweaty and the up and down with the chest and the way that the hand placement is being made, oftentimes by a male figure. Um, ew, just ew, not, but you said something, and I don't know, you said something that I think we've talked about this, and I don't think it's fresh on your mind because I don't think you said it intentionally, but I had the experience of being filmed and that being online on Facebook and not knowing about it. Like I did not know that it was happening. And this is going back way in time. And I was in a room full of people, squeezed into this room full of people. And I did have a connected with past trauma. I was literally in that experience, totally dissociated, and was supported through that by like the one person in the room who was qualified to support me through that. It was a big deal. And then later that evening, somebody said to me, "How do you feel about that being on Facebook?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Oh yeah, it was being recorded and the camera happened to be pointing right at you." So I opened it up and I started watching, and I like 2-3 minutes in, as soon as what happened started to happen, I got so triggered. So I did the next day go to that person, let them know I knew what had happened and ask them to take it down. They took it down, they apologized. However, a few things. This brings me to like when I walked into that room, there were signs up on the doors saying this is being recorded. And I didn't think much of it at that time. You know, we kind of think when we walk into these spaces of where it's this is being recorded, we have faith that those recorded, or I had faith that whatever was being recorded would be used or not used based on an ethical and with integrity, right? Sensitivity to what is happening. And that's not always the case. And I had a conversation. So we've had these conversations before about how much we just are not going to do this. And I was having a conversation with somebody else who does breath work and brought this in, and they said, "Oh, well, I do use those images, but I feel like if I have done my job, then that person has already then they've worked through that, and they're not going to be triggered when they see it again." And I'm like, okay, well, that's an interesting way to see that, but we know different.
As you were speaking, I've got this love for you, this friendship for you that is fucking pissed. Like and I'm trying to tame it just a little bit, but just naming it, like I do remember, and I know, and I'm recalling when you shared those details with me, and I remember it very clearly now. And I'm still pissed off that that happened because yes, while we say in our school these are recorded, there's still terms and agreements that we get to check in with the persons and say, hey, this is what we're going to use these recordings for. You know, these are what is going to happen. This is the potential of who's going to witness it. Please let us know along the way, and we'll check in too. But, side note for that person to just assume that if they did their job, that someone else would no longer be triggered, then that tells me, and this is my ownership. I own this belief system. This is my opinion that that person knows nothing about emotional navigation, genuine physical, energetic emotional release, integration, and then also the next steps after, because it is only when we get triggered again and respond differently that we can actually know that we healed and integrated and shifted, right? And so it's less about never being triggered again, but more about equipping people, um, so that the activation or the charge of that trigger is not taking over their present moment reality, and they're not living through a reactive response, but have more choice. And that's what we teach. And that is something that you can't learn in a weekend workshop. You can't learn, on these short courses, because it is not something to just learn in the mind, but is something to experience for ourselves and then put into practice over and over and over again. Yeah. And, coming back to the video, why is this emotional release prioritized? It's really a marketing tool. It's really a manipulative gimmick, and it just feeds on fear, and it feeds on need. And I would even use the word desperation, even to maybe take it a little extreme, because some people have been so locked and contained and have felt so much in survival mode that when they see these videos, they really do believe that if they push and they force and someone touches them and does this way, that they can finally release it. And sure, that may be the case, but that's a high risk experience. And also, if we really want to release something, go in the car, play the music that you listened to as a teenager, and effing rage out. You know what I mean? Like, if you're really wanting an emotional release, go roll down a hill. Go put yourself in an adrenaline experience where you are like testing limits. I'm just saying there are so many ways that we can naturally encounter these emotional releases. And it doesn't have to be in this forced, big, and I'll say risky way, because again, it's not about like really healing trauma somatically at its root is not about these big releases. Those are there, but it's more about the integration and the restoration of safety and the next steps, in between. I mean, we hear it all the time how people are re traumatized.
Yeah, and just coming back to that marketing tactic piece, because, a big part of marketing, when you dive into learning about marketing, it's psychologically driven, it's psychology based. And when you show these emotional releases, when you show these cathartic pieces, or when you even show these like sexualized connections, it is touching upon something deeply emotional and even primal within people, that then it's just, that's it, and it's a gimmick and it's marketing and that's it. Period. There's so much psychology behind this. And I feel like, we can just look at movies or look at commercials. Like, might watch a commercial and start crying, or we watch a movie and it takes us on this whole emotional roller coaster. That's another way. If you want to, if you want to release some emotions, watch a movie that helps you like move through that roller coaster of emotions. We don't realize that when you're looking at and engaging with things on social media, it's acting on those same foundations of triggering emotion within you. And it's just dangerous. And it's ew.
Yeah. And it, and so they're, playing on the opposite end, we can say that, yeah, I have had experiences with these bigger emotional releases in these ways that are being shown on the video. Yes, that can happen. And sure, it could be defined as even common. And that's not what we're aiming for. Right? We're not performing these emotional releases. And if you don't have emotional releases that match that, it doesn't mean you're not healing or integrating your experiences. And so what does emotional release and emotional navigation look like taste like, smell like, feel like? What does it like? Share with me, Lisa, and then I'll share too. What do you observe an emotional release that's more healthy, integrative, and supportive? What can that look like for our listeners that maybe have only seen these videos that give them that perspective?
Every breathwork session is going to be different. Every experience with connecting with the emotions is going to be different. And so, what does that look like, feel like, taste like, smell like? Sometimes it does look like, feel like, taste like, smell like a lot of tears or crying or screaming. But when those things happen, if there's tears and there's crying and if there's screaming, what can happen is we then want to potentially replicate that experience because it feels a certain way. But it can also be laughing. It can also be feeling pleasure in the body for the first time. It can also be feeling warmth and expansion in the body. It can be going to a dream-like state or an alternate state of consciousness where you are meeting somebody from your past or meeting somebody from your future or meeting God or having a spiritual experience or anything along these lines. It's something that is going to basically unlock within you. It's going to unlock something within you and open up something within you, right? So it's unlocking or dislodging a stagnant, we talk about like emotion is energy in motion, but we can have blocks in the body. We have blocks in the body. That emotion is not in motion. It is stagnant. It is what may be called an energy cyst. It is connecting with what is going to support the opening and the movement and the expansion of that energy shift. And that looks like whatever it is going to look like. That's what I have to say about that right now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. And I'm trying not to like repeat, but I specifically was like, smell, taste, feel, et cetera, because when we are releasing this energy and motion, it's not only about the movement and the sound. It quite literally could be deepening our stillness and connecting to the smell of the memory or the sound of the memory or something internal in our felt sensation of the memory. And so I guess I'm wanting to also add that these videos that are portraying this big emotional release, looking in this, rolling sexualized way, and that's how I perceive it. It kind of bypasses the intelligence of the body and allowing that natural, organic allowing of the body to open up and release that emotion, right? Because I can tell my body, I'm going to release this right now and I'm going to do jumping jacks and I'm going to breathe really fast. I'm going to breathe really quickly, really shallow. I'm going to intentionally put my body, mind over body, mind control, right, over this body and these scenarios to have these emotional releases. But is that actually releasing the stored stress and the energy that was imprinted and we fragmented out of our body during that traumatic experience? I would say no, because as we know in introspective breath work, when people dive in and we're co-regulating and we're co-creating this space, people feel such an unraveling, such a welcoming of all experiences, and they don't have to do anything. It doesn't have to look any way. They just get to dive deeper into their authentic presence. And then, well, there it goes. Some also really big, huge emotional releases happen when people finally feel safe enough to embody deeper into their body. And if that doesn't make sense to the mind for some of the listeners or viewers, that's okay. We hear in our school, I finally took a breath and now I know I live in a body. I feel more. I have a larger capacity. I mean, that's another thing too. In these ways of approaching mind over body when it comes to forcing or putting pressure to these emotional releases, we're not necessarily expanding our capacity. We're just connecting and releasing, but we're not expanding our capacity to feel and to navigate and to release, and we're not teaching our nervous system how to experience an emotion at whatever it is authentically, at whatever level it is authentically, and then be able to return to a baseline. We're teaching essentially that in order to finally feel our feelings, we have to put ourselves in these, I would say, more extreme scenarios, but that's not the case. We always say to our students, if you have the will to experience, if you are allowing yourself to feel, the body will feel at the rate in which you are available and capable for, so that there's integration, so that you can keep going deeper, right? It's sustainability here. Long-term change is what we're looking for. And these videos and these short-term trauma courses, they just perpetuate that dopamine, quick, 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 money, 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 fast, fast, fast. But there's no foundation, there's no integration. It's just a hot mess. It's just a hot mess. And I don't want to devalue someone's experience and they've had a great experience. That does occur every once in a while. I have heard that. And when I get to know that person more, the common thread is that it was very disembodied.
Yeah. Yeah. And I made note as you were talking, wrote down mind over body to release. It doesn't work. I know it doesn't work, but we can intentionally, this feels like such an important thing to speak to, because we can intentionally turn on the music and scream and hit on a pillow, or, there's a lot of different things that we can do to release emotion. Releasing emotion, that's more in alignment with blowing off some steam, releasing some stress, releasing some pent up energy. Will it make you feel better? Sometimes yes. Sometimes it'll make you feel more exhausted. It just depends, but it can support you in feeling better. However, we cannot intentionally release a trauma from the body. We can have an intention to connect with that, to breathe with that, to focus on that. But if I were going to say, like, I'm going to go and release this experience from my body by going out into the woods and screaming and crying and raging and rolling down a mountain, like, that's not actually going to do that. It doesn't work that way. The body, the nervous system has an intelligence, has its own intelligence. It has its own innate intelligence. And so you can go into, this is something that we find over and over again, and our students find too. You can go into an introspective breathwork session with an intention or with something specific that you might want to, but your breath is only going to connect you with what is present in that moment, ready to be connected with, processed, experienced, felt. That's it. That's it. Yeah. And so, we have people who want to have specific experiences. We were talking about somebody who wanted to have a rebirthing experience. It's like, okay, I want to have a rebirthing experience. You cannot guarantee that. You can never guarantee anything that a person is going to experience when they come into a session. You just can't. Yeah. You just can't. And there's such a difference, which I heard you speak to. There is such a difference. I mean, I spoke to how I connected with that traumatic experience when I was in this room full of people for whatever reason. That's where my breath went. That's where my nervous system went. And And I went into, I learn a lot of things through experience. Like I have to have experiences for whatever reason, or maybe I don't have to have experiences as much anymore as I used to. Let's make it softer. Make it softer. But had I not had that experience, I mean, I had that experience to really become embodied in the awareness and in the learning, so that it was part of my learning process for what not to do, right? Like what not to do, like how to carefully be with more care with recording and with holding space and with just the way that whole framework was set up. However, I did not go into that session with the intention of going where I went, and I was yelling and I was crying and I was screaming. I didn't know that I was yelling and I was crying and screaming. I had no idea that that was even happening. My throat was sore for 2 or 3 days, and I'm saying this now because and I was exhausted for a few days too, because when this starts to happen, this cathartic yelling, screaming, big experience that can start to happen, I went outside of what is called the window of tolerance. And so we teach our students about the window of tolerance and how we can support our clients in touching the window of tolerance without going outside beyond, so that the system is overloaded. And that feels important to bring through here as well, because that's the problem is people see these cathartic experiences, they see the yelling, the screaming, the whatever. They don't realize, and even a facilitator might not realize, like, that can be more than just some emotional release. That can be, this physical assault is happening right now in this moment. And as a facilitator, I'm just encouraging them to keep yelling and screaming. And they're completely dissociated. That person is going to be completely re-traumatized by that experience. So this is a big part of why these one-day weekend workshops, things along these lines, they don't work, because you have to be able to recognize when someone is dissociated and to be able to support them in having what we call a dual experience, where they know I'm here, they know what room we're in, and now I can be a resource of safety for them. And we can together change that story. And that is, in that experience, that changing the story, that having a resource now is the same as having that resource in that moment where it wasn't present. And that is a big part of what the actual integration of that experience is.
So I want to add to that. I mean, I was like, ooh, I want to, speak about this desire, this concept to have a rebirthing experience, but I'll table that for whenever it circles back. Um, I'm just taking breaths with all that. My body was like so activated. And I was activated, of course, from my own experiences, knowing some of yours, and then also listening and our students' experiences too, and also supporting our students be able to learn how to self resource too in those moments, as you, me, our teachers, or whoever is practicing the facilitation becomes that anchor for them to have that dual experience. And that is not something you can learn in a weekend workshop. And what that requires, and I'll bring in this pushing, this forcing, this go, and even the music stimulate for 40 an hour, like just that constant, more like holotropic style stimulation, just like boom, boom, boom. And just pushing and not really connecting to, but maybe reading a script of something, right? Like not connecting to the presence and the energy of the group. Because as you and I know, when tending and facilitating and being the anchor of the energy of a group, the collective group will have a single, maybe two experiences, and that energy can be unanimous and it can be coherent, or it can be very dynamic and magnetic in an opposition kind of way. So you're learning how to tend to that, but then you're also learning how to tend to each individual's energy and processing too, because in these live a larger group experiences, I mean, goodness, 6 people alone is a good amount to work with. You can go deep in 3 people, right? But these larger groups, right? Their sounds, their smells, the energy in between, the physical is all activating everyone. Our nervous systems are activating each other in these groups. So, what's happening on that subconscious, unconscious level is naturally going to be impacting everyone else, especially in these high vulnerable states. But coming back to what requires of a true, genuine trauma informed facilitator and breathwork specifically is to be aware of our own agenda. And that is not something that people like to hear because how we and our approach in the one breath method, right? We are client led sessions. And we also teach our facilitators how to tune into their nervous system, their emotions, their ways of tending or caring for maybe their people pleasing patterns or over giving patterns or whatever it may be, so that they can put that in check, so that we can honestly, authentically arrive present for someone else because their needs, we can't assume them. And in these emotional releases, whether they're more quiet or loud, we don't know their experience at all whatsoever, especially if they've retouched a trauma where they are now bridged out of their body into that past experience while also being here, not knowing. I mean, that's also why I don't like those videos of that physical touch just being like, it drives me insane as someone who's done massage therapy and who is very sensitive to touch as well. Because as you and I know, and we've made these videos in our school, my hand can be 2 feet, 4 feet above your belly. And if I'm attuned to you and your nervous system and your energy centers, and it's a genuine, clear, coherent experience and connection, I don't need to apply physical touch. We don't need to grind and dig and do all of these things. And I say it like that because that's literally how they're being displayed on these videos. We do not teach touch this way. We do not say touch is even mandatory. We teach safe, appropriate touch. And this is always by consent before and even during the session. We get to inform our clients, hey, I'm right here. Hey, I'm with you. I'm noticing this. Would you like my hand here? And we give a demonstration beforehand. I know and I'm just having this memory circle back of a client of mine was just so terrified of receiving touch. They found the power of the breath as it would breathe them, right? Finally, a client was able to breathe them, but they have this memory of someone just, putting their hands on their shoulders right in between their chests. And it was just so jarring. And it activated such a deeper experience for them, and they froze there. I know I kind of went sideways with the touch, but
yeah, but it feels it's related and it's important. So let's talk a little bit about consent because you mentioned being a massage therapist. I am also a massage therapist. I am not currently practicing massage. You aren't either, but yeah, it's been a long time being a massage therapist. And so it's something that, in that role, I experienced from everybody, every client. Every now and then there would be a client that would be very specific and vocal about places that they did not want to receive touch. Like I had a plastic surgeon client who never wanted their hands touched, that was, and would remind me every time before the session, which is great. And then one day that person actually did want their hands massaged. So that was interesting. But most people, and I imagine that you relate to this, most people would just say whatever you think is best. You use whatever pressure you think is best. You massage wherever you think I need it. And that always bothered me. I was like, this is your body. This is your body. And I would educate people as well because there's a belief in massage therapy and in the massage therapy world for people getting massage that deep tissue is better, to get muscles and knots out, really get in there and work it out, really get in there and work it out. And that's not it. That's just not it. It might give a temporary relief for a period of time, but those knots come back. Those tension patterns come back because those are related to chronic ways that we hold our body, the patterns that we take in life. Like if we sit all day, they could be related to emotional experiences, traumas that are stored in the body. Those tension patterns will continue to come back until you release and shift and change what you need to permanently let those go. And that is possible. So with consent, a lot of people, particularly if they have experienced sexual abuse or any kind of hands-on physical abuse as a child, and or who have been in the medical system for any length of time, do not recognize that they have autonomy over their body. And so they come into breathwork in that same sort of way. They may not even be asked for consent. They might just be told like, oh, I might be placing hands on you, or people might just place hands on them. But you always have the power to make a choice on whether or not you receive physical touch, you want physical touch, you like physical touch. And more than that, we come back to this concept of those experiences are within your nervous system. They are within your fascia. Can a hands-on external support assist at times with the release of that? Sure. Yes. If your body doesn't really feel comfortable and welcoming and inviting to that touch, absolutely not. And so in your mind, you might be like, oh yeah, I want to receive this touch because it's going to help. But your body is like, no, that's not going to help. And you don't need it. Like Debbie's saying, the breath in itself it's an inner physical touch. And the over body, like, yeah, clients feel that. Clients feel it. Happens over and over and over and over again. They know exactly where you are. That nervous system is aware of the contact that is 2 feet above the body.
Yeah. And I just want to interject here because, listening to you, it's like, what is it? It's like I have to like close my eyes as if I'm like here with someone in this moment. But it's like when I offer to apply appropriate, consensual, respectful touch, this is in support of them, knowing that they're supported and resourced to experience the feeling. It is not to scoop or to take away or to put my energy into someone else. It is to remind them how capable and how intelligent their system is to restore this health, to be able to move. And so it's more than the emotional release. It's about remembering what it feels like to be supported. And if someone's never felt that before, then in those moments, they realize that, oh, wow, all I really need almost, and opinion, my own personal opinion and my observation, other people can have their own opinions on their own. In my opinion, in my belief, the more resourced we are, the more supported we are, the easier it is to feel the emotions. The mind wants to let it go. The mind wants to let it release, because of the pressure. It's too much. It's uncomfortable. I've been holding on to it. But that's the thing. When we feel supported and resourced, we get to remember why we're holding on. And that's the actual release that happens. It's not the emotion. It's not necessarily even the energy, though, of course, there's depths and degrees. But how I feel it personally in my own body, it's why am I still holding on to this experience? Like, how did this experience shift my identity of me? How did it change my relationship with myself or the external? Maybe that's person, animal, situation, whatever, right? And so the support of the physical touch is that remembrance that someone is here with me. I am capable to feel this. I'm willing to experience whatever is here so that I can discover why I'm holding on and figure out how I want to be in relationship with it now. Right? Because that's another thing too. It's like, sure, XYZ traumatic experience happened. The emotional impact, that energetic impact is stored in my body. I can tend and I can work with it, but will my mind ever forget? No. Will my body ever forget? No. So, what is the goal? Is to not have that emotional charge connected to it so I can speak freely about that experience as it was over there here and not be impacted by it in my present moment. Like that's ultimately a goal. And I would feel, I believe in trauma and healing trauma. And so these videos of just idolizing the emotional release is completely disregarding everything else that is required to have true transformation. And I would even say too, you know, and like you said it earlier too, the sometimes that emotional release can be stronger than the experience that we had. And I say that because of how many times we've held on to it or relived it or thought of something else. Like there's a compacted energy that can also feel really intense and really strong. And so if and when that happens, there is a recovery time. It's not like, oh, that was great, let's have all the energy to go do something else. And sometimes actually I have had that, but my emotional release wasn't so extreme. It wasn't so like, like just energied out, but there is a recovery period. And so what I hear and what you've heard too in our community and our school and the clients of our students, they have people who had breath work from others that it's been forced, it's been too much, too fast, too hard, too deep, and then they're drained for like a week, or their reality has shifted in such a way that it's destabilizing and they don't know how to position themselves in their life anymore. Or, goodness, on the occasion, I know we're getting late at the time, but on the occasion, even if someone goes in with the intention, if they remember something like I have, if they awaken to a trauma that they have no memory of aside from in that moment because it was stored in their body, then they're like, sometimes people, and I'll speak for myself, we grasp. We grasp for validation. We grasp for, oh my gosh, is this real? We grasp for like, someone to tell us that our experiences is true, it's real, XYZ, we're not going crazy, we didn't make it up, da, 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 da. And that language, that presence, that genuine connection when someone's in that maybe chaotic or panic mode is not learned in a weekend. Like, mm-mm. It's not learned in a weekend. And it's not learned up here either. We can only have so much concept, but it's only until we feel the power of maintaining that presence when someone who's integrating in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And just speaking to that last piece of when a memory emerges or when something comes through that we may not be aware of, or that may be destabilizing or confusing, and seeking that external validation is the word that you used, just a reassuring that the information that comes through is valid, period. Just that, yes, it is in the body, it is a felt, there's so many things swirling right now. I'm gonna just pause. There's so many things swirling through. There's that attunement that you're speaking to, the attunement in the nervous system. We are always attuning. We are always, co-regulating. And when somebody has this big experience, they're either going to self-resource, right? And recognize that what is coming up is for them for a reason, and be able to move through and move with that. And there's so many things that can happen with that seeking. Yeah, I'm receiving what you're saying in a couple different ways. Like seeking external validation. One, as a facilitator, we can provide that, right? Like we can support a person in trusting their own experiences. And that's really just all that I was wanting to say. We can support a person in trusting their own experiences, but we have to, as a facilitator, believe, right? Like we have to believe in the power of what comes through. Like there could be a lot of gaslighting, if somebody does not believe that You can have a memory come through that you can trust that memory. Or if somebody doesn't believe that, you can have rewrite a story or find closure or change a story through an altered state of consciousness and through working within the body and the breath. Then that's going to come through with how you are responding to the client. But then there's the other piece of it, in that a person might go seeking out that validation or confirmation from family members or friends or other people in their life. And I think that's what you were speaking to. And I was wanting to speak to this first. And oftentimes what happens can be more destabilizing, because those persons, oftentimes the people in our life who, let's say, may not have protected when they needed to, or there's so many reasons why a family member or a friend or whoever was involved may not even remember or recall themselves or want to acknowledge the truth of what happened, or to keep you quiet, to keep you silenced. And so going to the family members or going to the people that are involved for, like, hey, did this happen, can be even more destabilizing, because then it creates a chain reaction and chain effect of negative interactions within the family or community system.
Yes. And I intentionally use that seeking external validation because when people are learning how to um, have self agency, right? When they're learning to have self agency or be their own inner authority or just their own inner resource, like there is those old patterns of saying, okay, well, I value XYZ person's thoughts, opinions, remembrance of this situation. If they say it didn't happen, then I must be crazy or I must be making it up, right? But not even just like the physical past experiences too. Like there's a lot of the spiritual, we know the otherworldly that we can get in a topic for another day. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll do a topic another day. We'll do a whole nother episode of altered states of consciousness and the reality shifters. But what's really important here that again, you're not going to learn, like you can learn everything you want about trauma. It's accessible on Google. You can do the education, et cetera, et cetera. But it is real world application and practice and also coaching. Because like you said, when someone is in this experience, panic or very happy. They're like, I had this beautiful, and it was XYZ. The story is grand. The remembrance is this. They're feeling new things. They saw new things. They experienced new things. And if they feel confident to voice that, then as the facilitator, it is our responsibility to receive them authentically as it is real and true for them, regardless of our own beliefs, perspectives. Yeah, because who are we to tell others what they shouldn't do? One of the things early on my clients really learned to love about me, but really had challenges at first, was they would say, "What do you think about that?" Especially with the dream world, right? Doing altered states of consciousness. How would you interpret it? And I would always push back and say, "Well, you are a whole unique individual conscious with a whole life of experiences. I can tell you how I would filter it through my lens of my life and my belief systems and my feelings, etc. But it may not be accurate or correct for you. What do you feel about it?" And that can be frustrating at first because we love those quick answers. We love those quick solutions. We love the quick Google something. What does this mean? Da da da. But also in how we use our language. And when we look at Google, we can get a completely different answer. Okay.
Yeah, that last little piece, and we'll just start to tie it all in and wrap it up, because that last little piece made me think about our algorithms. Brennan and I had a discussion, I don't know, maybe 4 podcasts back or something, and we were talking about. So go back and listen to that one too. But one thing that came up was your algorithm, your Google search, your Facebook, your Instagram is going to feed you back what you are interested in. It is going to support and further validate your beliefs. It doesn't necessarily give you other pieces of information or new insights or new perspectives. And so Googling, that can be, sometimes it's fun, sometimes I will let me just, after I have I have my own ideas, I'll be like, well, let me see what Google says about this. And I can pull up what does an owl mean. And if Debbie pulls up what does an owl mean and a listener pulls up what does an owl mean, we're all going to get different answers because of the algorithm and our belief systems that are there. And so just noting that.
And so, just for fun, our facilitators aren't Google. they
No.
are literally taught in ways to get curious, to support challenging beliefs and perspectives, and in a way that is supportive and also just curious and accepting too. It can be really challenging for people who are maybe dedicated for a season, chapter, or a lifetime of healing to enter into this stage that healing only looks XYZ, and that the supporters along the way don't challenge. And that's not true in the One Breath method. We're here to get curious, to support inner resourcing, co-regulation, inner agency, and also that comes with challenging and naming and claiming belief systems or thoughts and patterns, because we're all so conditioned that until we bring intention to how we live our life and our thoughts and how we're in relationship, we're literally repeating patterns, and that's just it. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a couple more episodes. One is going into the spiritual realms and alternate states of consciousness. And then what's coming up now is I would love to come back and talk about, you said, our facilitators are not Google. They're also not ChatGPT. And there is this thread, there's this thing that is happening now where people are creating relationships with ChatGPT and relying on these ChatGPT insights for mental health support, which is super dangerous. But so we'll add those two conversations to come, and we'll close out for today. So if anybody, we love to hear from you. We love to hear from you. Drop your questions, drop your comments, and like this episode, share it with a friend, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to One Breath Wisdom. If something in today's episode spoke to you, I would love to know it. Send me a message on Instagram at One Breath Institute or at Lisa McNett, and please share the episode with someone else who needs to hear it. Remember, you are not here to carry it all. You are here to come home to yourself, one breath at a time. Until next time, take a breath and be well.